This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 325, the April 10th, 2018 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you from the Brooklyn bunker once again after a super fun weekend in Lexington. Shout out to all my friends and new friends who I met who are listeners to the show. There were a lot of you around town. Very gratifying when you're a horse racing podcast host to be able to go to Lexington and meet so many like-minded people. Fantastic weekend that was. We'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later in the show. The man I'm about to introduce was a late scratch for that trip, had a little family issue to attend to, so we didn't get to see him out there. But he is here today. You know him, you love him. He is the only horse player to ever grace the front cover of the venerable daily racing form. He's the people's champ, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
PTF, did you miss me this weekend? I missed you. I was looking forward to being there, and there's actually a movie out right now with the title of what happened to me. So if you can figure that out, so we'll
interesting. I don't know that reference. I'll take a look. Folks can chime in on Twitter with their answers to that one, hopefully. But in all seriousness, everything's cool. You're back on the beam?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm going to Houston Saturday night for a wedding, and then heading to Lexington Sunday morning. So I'll be there for the Grade 1 Gamble. Was fortunate enough to get qualified this weekend, so that'll be good.
You know, this weekend I learned something about that Texas city whose name you just pronounced, apparently incorrectly. Do you know what I'm talking about here?
Houston?
Correct. I was told by the Prince of Keeneland, who should know. The Prince of Keeneland and the Princess of Keeneland were actually having this conversation, and I just butted right in because I thought it was so interesting. Apparently, it's not Houston, JK. Euston. Like the train station in London. Like, it's pronounced E-U-S-T-O-N. I did not realize this. But he insisted to me it's Houston.
That's just like some annoying girl. You know what that is? That's like when there's like a 7th grade girl who starts spelling her name with a Z and to try to be cool and Jake's just making that up to make himself feel better about Houston. I've lived in Texas my whole life. I've never heard that before.
That's hilarious. We had a great time. He's a fabulous host around that part of the world, and he was earning his name in the green room. People coming up to genuflect and kiss the ring of Mr. Jake Ballas on Saturday at Keeneland. Particularly good time. A high point of which you would have appreciated. This is so racetrack, I have to tell it. I'm talking out of school here, absolutely, but he won't mind. So he was getting some information passed along about certain horses that were training well or whatever, some type of tip while sitting at the table. And then throughout the day, we started chatting with the table to our right. And basically, long story short, it turned out that the Prince of Keeneland and this other fella had a mutual friend. And this hot information that was being funneled from us was actually originating from the table to our right to the mutual friend and then being texted back to Jake. How horse racing is that?
Oh, live by the tip, die by the tip.
Oh, and there was plenty of both over the course of the weekend. Amazing weekend of racing. We're going to start, a lot of times on this show we go east to west. We're not going to do that this time, JK. We're going to start out west because it was certainly the heavyweight, the feature, the race of all races over the course of the weekend. The Santa Anita Derby, Justify, Bolt Doro. What did you think?
West is best, huh? I'm just kidding. I don't want Andy Sterling to tweet at me. Yeah, no, I thought that the race lived up to the hype when they turned for home and the two horses that you wanted to see match up. They didn't lock eyes for very long, but when they're looking at each other when they turn for home, it's always exciting. And I think that Justify stamped himself as the Derby favorite. I think that he and deservedly so, right? I mean, we talked about last week about how some people on Twitter were a little bit annoyed at the fact that he was being kind of crowned the Derby winner after not even making a stake start. But I think the hype was real, and I think that the way he's stopping the clock in his 3 starts, I don't care who he's going against or what kind of trip he's getting. He's a talented animal that will take some running to beat him come the first Saturday in May.
I thought Travis Stone, who of course you hear his voice at the beginning of our podcast, had a great tweet about it, where he said at first, watching the stretch run, you kind of wanted, I'm paraphrasing here, but you maybe thought Justify would just run away from that field. But then you realized that the horse that was trying to run him down was a pretty fine horse in his own right in Boldoro. And yeah, the numbers, do you have all the figures in front of you? I'm like one step away from being able to pull them up here.
I don't have them in front of me. I think he's triple digit again, right, for Beyer. So I think 107 on the Beyer scale. Yeah, so that's a little bit more than triple digit, right? I mean it's triple digit, right? But it's not
quite quadruple digit, but it's right. No, it's a step forward, is what it is.
JK tries math, failed. No, but I think that I asked a question to my racing encyclopedia friend Nick Tamero. I asked, I wonder who the last horse was that his first 3 lifetime starts, or hers, were triple-digit Beyers, and off the top of his head, he couldn't think of one.
Maybe pops into head, but I don't know if that's right.
I thought maybe Uncle Mo.
That's an interesting theory too. I wish it'll take me too long to pull these things up, but I'll try. If I get you to vamp a little bit at some point in the show, JK, maybe I'll take a look and see if we can look up.
Me vamping is not. I don't ever vamp, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You just go on and on. I don't know if you vamp. But that is interesting. That's an interesting question to take a look at. On Timeform US, the figure comes back at 132. That's even higher, really, the way that I look at it, suggesting, more like a 112 by my reckoning. The pace, started fast and it ended fast. I agree. He proved a lot on the day, and I think that I'm just pretty upset. I told the story on the last show about, I've tried to get this horse at 16. I've tried to get this horse at 12. Well, now I'm going to be lucky to get 5. And in the USA, it might end up going off a bit shorter than that, at least if you believe that last future Kentucky Derby wager pool, JK, where I think he closed at 5-2. Before we move on to talk about Boldoro and the rest, just flat out, in your mind, and I know this is a game that you don't, play that often, but if you were to guess a fair value price from today, Justify, what would you come up with? And if you don't have an answer, I'll ask it another way.
Yeah, I guess from a standpoint of what do you want to call value at this point, I hate to be too particular, but if the bet you're asking me to make is no runner, no bet, or if it's has to break from the gate to count, those obviously change. We have 3 to 4 weeks left still, so there's a lot of things that can go wrong, especially with a horse. I don't even want to put this in the air, but a horse that didn't start until he was 3, there was clearly some situations that led to that. So, it's not outside the realm of possibility that, things could get hairy again. So, I don't know. I think at this point, there's no real future bet that presents a ton of value. I mean, maybe you can find some future where you can get 50 to 1 on a horse that's going to be 25 or 28 to 1 or 32 to 1 on the day. But I think with all things considered, just wait to see where that horse draws. If you draw the rail and are working bad, then that 50 to 1 wasn't really worth waiting until the morning up to get 32 to 1.
So buy, sell, hold at 5 to 1 on Justify.
I mean, it's strictly from a math purpose. You buy it because I think he'll be shorter than that. He's a big, beautiful horse. He's a Baffert horse. He's going to train lights out when he gets to Churchill, so the buzz is going to get even higher. And then, he's, if he draws well, he could end up going off at, American Pharoah went off at 5 to 2. He was obviously highly regarded as well, but this horse could be even more highly regarded than Pharoah was, just because in the brilliance in which he's been doing it. Pharoah was winning, but he wasn't running off the screen,
I feel, right or wrong, I feel like the Apollo Curse narrative means I don't think he's going off less than 3 to 1 And that might still be enough to just go ahead and take the 5-1, especially if you can back it up, as I would like to do, with betting Mendelssohn, not over there, where he's now also 5-1. They're sort of they are co-favorites right now, no sort of about it. I have a feeling Mendelssohn could end up being 8-1 here. So you could maybe try to do a little bit of arbitrage if you have access to those international markets. Look to lock in Justify there at 5-1. Mendelssohn here, even if he's 6 or 7-1, he's going to be longer than he is in the UK right now. I'm almost positive. So that's sort of the direction my brain is going in right now, as far as the very top of the market. And now I ask you, let's talk nuts and bolts of the race. Bolt d'Oro and Castellano. Subsequently, we've learned that Castellano has opted off of Bolt d'Oro, reporting from Jay Privman, first on DRF Live and then on DRF.com and the pages of Daily Racing Form. Castellano is going to ride Audible, meaning Espinoza will come to Bolt d'Oro. Early in the race of the Santa Anita Derby, I just got an impression for like a half a second. We haven't talked about this off air, so I'm curious what you been ridden a bit more aggressively early. And I thought he was almost ridden to, not that they would have minded winning, but ridden with the next race in mind, more so than Justify, who obviously needed to really show something and get battle tested. Bolt d'Oro already very battle tested. Going around there and running second in the big picture of life might even help Bolt d'Oro's cause, as opposed to having another big throwdown. What do you think about that idea? What did you think of Bolt d'Oro in the race and the tactics I was describing?
Yeah, I think that he probably, that was kind of the trip they probably were planning on getting. Look, we're going to let Justify go. We're going to try to stay close to him. Bolt d'Oro doesn't have a ton of speed. I know that he was precocious. He had won some, he won the grade 1 as a 2-year-old. So you kind of feel like he's tactical in that sense, but he actually is more of a come from off of it guy. He's not, and so I wasn't shocked that he was that far back. I think Justify just got comfortable and they weren't going very fast. And he kind of let him get away from him just a little bit. I wouldn't knock the ride, but he did let him get away from him probably a little bit more than Mick and the team would have preferred after they broke from the gate.
But do you hold it against Bolt d'Oro going forward? What do you make of his chances as we approach the first Saturday in May?
I'm just not a Bolt d'Oro guy, so I'm not really interested in Bolt d'Oro going forward. I get it. Yeah, he's talented and all of that stuff. But for all the reasons we've talked about before, it's just there's a lot of things about him that make me uneasy. The issue he kind of had earlier in the year, he's obviously come back from that. But we've seen the 1.25 miles be that kind of determining factor when you have a horse that kind of has a late start. And then also just like in general, the trainer. He's obviously done a good job with the horse, but he doesn't have nearly as many skins on the walls as a Todd or a Bob or even a Chad of being in this race and knowing what it takes to get a horse ready for it. So, and he'll probably always be bet just because he's kind of a big name horse, and so a quote unquote famous horse. I've got no interest moving forward. I could see him in kind of an underneath situation, but I think I'll always be trying to beat him on the first Saturday in May.
Interesting. 10-1 right now looks like the best price available on Bolt d'Oro in England. It's hard to know. We heard the Ruiz quotes about, okay, that was 80% last time. So there's a few different ways you can read that quote. One is, trainers speak. He doesn't, like you said, not necessarily as experienced as some, might not, he might just be talking to talk there as opposed to having a definitive idea of what that really means. Or perhaps a little bit of a step back after the grueling race off the layoff. I don't know what to make of the horse. I like the fact that he, got away from there and didn't show any of that poor pushing off that had plagued him in some of the other races and was an indicator perhaps of declining form or issues. I'm not excited to key him or anything, but he is seeming to be a horse that I'm very interested to see how he trains going forward. And he's a horse that if shows positive signs, if he were starting to tout himself in the morning and going to be up of that 10-1 odds, I wouldn't rule him out just yet. I guess that's all I'm saying. Our opinions aren't that different, though.
Yeah, no, he's not a toss for me, but I'm going to try to beat him out of the top spot, I think, just based on the things we've talked about.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the Bluegrass. We'll go back and we'll talk about other races, but I think we should roll through, hit the Triple Crown notes first. You good with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do want to talk a little bit about the seemingly soft trip for Justify. I don't know if we want to come back to it as more of a
let's do it now.
Topic.
What do you what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just think that, if you were watching Twitter and looking at Twitter, you notice that like everyone wants to talk about this idea that he's got an easy trip every time, and let's see what happens when there's 20 horses in the field and 170,000 people. Like, look, and I tweeted it, and it actually did. A lot of people seem to agree. It's like good, fast, tactical, talented horses get good trips because they're good, fast, tactical, talented horses. It's a trait of his. You can't knock it as if he's getting lucky into these situations. He's his ability and the horse.
It's a skill.
He's putting himself into those spots.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's not.
He'll do the same
luck.
thing.
Yeah,
he's going to do the same thing in the Derby. He's going to be in the clear, the 2 or the 3 path, or on the lead. He's going to have a great trip there too because of the skill that he has.
You think he could draw the rail and be okay?
I mean, I don't think anyone wants to do that because it just forces your hand. But if I had to pick a horse that I needed, a type of horse I needed to win the Derby to draw the rail, that's the kind of horse I would pick. I mean, Pharaoh, I think, could have been fine from the rail, I mean,
yeah, it's hard
someone
to
that's
know.
If you can get out of the gate and get your position moving forward, you're fine. I mean, Always Dreaming would have won the Derby last year if he was on the rail. He broke.
So last year was.
He was fourth.
Yeah, last year was also a bit
Conveyor
of an exception because of the way the track was playing. Though, again, who knows if it won't be that way. But yeah, let's talk about that idea again. I think it's a mistake that a lot of trip handicappers fall into, that they ascribe horses who get good trips to luck. It's not luck. I mean, sometimes it is luck, especially for a closer. Closer can get a beautiful trip, pace out in front of him on a day where it doesn't matter on the track, particularly if you're 4 wide or on the rail. Speed horses go too fast. Big, like, clunky type closer, just able to sort of go around there early, tip out when he needs, pass everybody. That's the kind of perfect trip that, like, you want to expect that to happen next time. Good luck. That's like, you find a wallet on the street, you go back there the next day expecting to find another one. That's that type of good trip is luck. But then there are the type of trips, and Mike Maloney in Betting with an Edge, by the way, 2 really fun signings. Well, actually, 1 really fun signing, 1 really freezing cold signing over the weekend in Lexington. But it was great to meet so many fans of the show and just cool horse racing fans at both of those events. But in the book, Mike talks about the push-button horse. And the push-button horse is the horse who has a much better opportunity to make his own trip. And I think the example he even uses in the book is American Pharaoh. And when you talked about, when you were saying the first part of that, JK, about how certain horses have the ability to make their own trip, I almost said, you know who else was like that? You're talking about Justify. You know who else was like that? American Pharaoh. It's a skill, and it's something that you want to. Those type of horses, I think, for me, you always want to give a little bit of extra consideration. And I think that's what you're saying about Justify. And it reminded me of the old, and I sent this out on Twitter, but I think it was just a response, so maybe people didn't see it. And it's a great line. Sean Clancy used to tell me when I talked to him about, I'd find some big clunky closer and talk about how many, this horse has had a tough trip the last 4 times, Sean. Look at him come running. And he would say to me something along the effect of, you get a lot better trips in a Ferrari than you do a Yugo. And I think it's the exact same point is, what you've got under the hood, as it were, is going to be able to get you in and out of spots. And some horses trip handicappers fall in love with, it's because they're not fast enough to hit the spot. So that's why it's a bad trip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you are tactical, Justify. Let's just say Justify. I mean, in any race he runs in, he's either going to be on the lead or he's going to be 2 or 3 wide. He'll always have the choice of those situations because he tactically puts himself in the race. Now, if you get a horse who's a closer who keeps finding himself on the lead, yeah, that horse is getting fortunate. That horse is getting lucky. But when you have a horse that's got a ton of speed, who pops from the gate, who can cruise at a higher clip than others. That's not a lucky situation. That horse's skill is putting him there.
I don't know if we did just get a Muggsy Barks for bingo. I'm not sure if we had the postman comes during the show. Fortunately, Chef Wheezy's here, and we'll hopefully know to open the door so I can continue the show. Oh, we're so professional here on the DRF Players Podcast. Meanwhile, let's go to Keeneland and the Bluegrass Stakes. Return of the 2-year-old champion, Good Magic. What did you think of this run, JK?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was cool. I thought he ran well. I mean, the Bayer's not one that makes me want to sprint and cut the line. It wasn't triple digits.
95, I think I heard, but I'm going to look that up. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to make sure I deal with this situation upstairs.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, the lack of the triple digit situation isn't encouraging. Obviously, he wasn't fully cranked and tightened last time, which is a little bit outside of Chad's MO. Chad usually brings him back running. But he ran on Saturday. I'm not crazy about the field he beat. Not crazy about the performance. But he's a nice, talented horse. Obviously, he's got some bottom to him with his 2-year-old racing. And he's got one of the best conditioners in the game. I could see him being involved. But I don't think there's any cuteness or cheekiness involved in, like, somehow making him your Derby horse. I think he'll probably be, 10-1, 12-1, 8-1, 9-1. He probably deserves to be all of those, and if not higher. I'm not over enthusiastic about him or anybody else. I mean, I guess if I got into a street fight, I would like to have Sporting Chance on my side. He's a you got to watch out for that one. He's crazy. Free Drop Billy must have somehow made him mad when they were weanlings on the farm somewhere, or they were in some sale. They're at some sale, and he looked at him the wrong way, and they almost got into it. And now every time he sees him, he just takes a hard right turn to try to wipe him out.
Oh man, that was a mess. We'll get to that in a minute. As for your Good Magic comments, folks, that's what's called damning with faint praise right there from JK. The Bayer did come back 95, better on time form with a 122 through even coded fractions. I guess I just expected, this is another instance where I expected visually a bit more in the lane, and then the figure doesn't back it up the way it did with Justify, which just makes me think, and the more I handicap that race, the more I sort of just staring at the numbers that those horses had run already, was thinking that he really just should win. And when you get to that point where you're thinking a horse should win, and then they just win and don't overly impress, it's hard to be too excited. But I will say this, I think it was Craig Mokowski pointed out, if you're a ground loss believer, he was wide all the way around there. If you're going to factor that into your number, like perhaps in the sheet methodologies, I haven't seen what number those guys have given Good Magic, but perhaps it would be more impressive. Is it possible that we're underrating him a bit?
No, I don't think so. And like I said, I'm not overly enthusiastic about the 3 horses that ran behind Good Magic either, which I think is, I guess Free Drop Billy's like that kind of interesting one that I could still get interested in getting 3rd or 4th in Derby just because of how Dale does in that race. But I think Flame Away was kind of helped by the track. I thought the track was probably playing a little bit more inside than anything. I don't think it was like a heavy inside, but I think it was, at least he was helped by that. He was awful, and his workout was salty leading into the race. So I have to think that he was helped by that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, losing ground is always something that you're going to consider. The Sheets guys will probably upgrade Good Magic's performance, but I thought he got an okay trip considering.
That's interesting. I mean, it sounds somewhat contradictory to me what you're saying, because on one hand, you're saying if the inside was a positive for Flame Away, doesn't it have to be seen as a little bit more of a negative for the horses who are wide in the race, including Good Magic and Free Drop Billy?
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that the track picked Flame Away up and carried him, right? I just think that, a lot of these horses are meeting a 1.8 for the first time. So that extra furlong kind of slows them down a little bit, and then obviously, he saved all that ground, and that's always going to help too. I just think Free Drop Billy, I'm not so much in love with him based on his performances. I'm interested in Free Drop Billy because of the kind of trip he'll probably get in the Derby, the fact that he seems to want extra ground, and his trainer does well at Churchill Downs going 1.25 miles. I would be kind of interested in any horse that Dale brings out there. And the same with Doug O'Neill. I think that getting a horse ready for that type of race is a special trait, and those guys seem to do a good job at it.
Well, certainly Free Drop Billy would have been a little bit closer, if not. You were joking about Sporting Chance before, and once again making this weird right turn in the stretch, prompting various conspiracy theories. But I'll say this: there's no doubt that it cost Free Drop Billy third, and the DQ there made a ton of sense. And I think that's a good call. Not Free Drop Billy to win necessarily, but Free Drop Billy to come running for a piece if you're playing trifectas or the famous Derby Superfecta. This is a horse, it sounds like, is going to be on your tickets.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think and to be honest, at this point, like if I was looking for like that kind of cheeky reverse key, playing third and fourth, he would be the one of the candidates for that. Obviously, want to see what Combatant does next week, but those two types of horses, they're gonna be running on late when everyone else isn't, and those are the kind of horses you want for those third and fourth spots at Louisville.
Free Drop Billy is in the field, right? He's about 15th on the point standings list after that one, so I can't see losing 5 points. Combatant has a little bit of work to do outside looking in right now, but of course, I assume he's running this weekend.
Yeah, I just made that assumption. And hopefully I'm not wrong. I mean, he's been running at all the races at Oaklawn. Their big one's coming up next week. It's Asmussen's home course, and he hasn't run yet, so I would think that that's where he'll be.
That's going to be Plan A, and potentially one to keep an eye on for those lower rungs of the exotics there. Anything else to talk about coming out of the Bluegrass Stakes? I don't think either of us are overly enthused about Flame Away. Free Drop Billy, we talked about that. Sporting Chance, I mean, he would be on the outside looking in now too. Is Lucas crazy enough to just run him back this weekend in the Lexington or Arkansas to try to get the points to get in?
Yeah, he's crazy enough to do that for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That horse is a tricky. He might want a little shorter too. Maybe that's why he keeps taking a right turn. He's trying to turn back and go to the barn. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about him.
Yeah, it's tricky. And then the horse that didn't run, who was entered on Saturday, who we talked about a bit last week, Quip, opting to go to Arkansas for the Derby, going to go for that grade 1. And I don't know, how are you feeling? If you made that decision, how are you feeling about it right this second?
I don't know, the way Flame Away ran, I was drawn inside of him, and I probably could have been where he was. So I don't know if you regret it, right? But you definitely want to try. You probably wish you would have got the same trip. It's tough when you see a horse get the trip you probably would have gotten.
And who theoretically overperforms or what, 5-1 for Flame Away off that second place finish. But anyway, I think Quip's certainly going to be a major contender next week, and for their purposes, for what they're looking for, that grade 1 obviously worth an awful lot, even more so than a great showing would have been last weekend. So that's going to be a fun race. We got Magnum Moon, we got Quip, we got Combatant, and several other interesting contenders. We'll preview that race. I'll actually be doing the write-up once again for the Derby Countdown Guide. Let's talk about the Wood, and then we'll loop back and talk about Select. Maybe we'll go back across the country the other way after talking about the Wood. We'll do some New York undercard, go back through Kentucky, and end on the West Coast, as we often do on this show. But let's start off with the Wood and Vino Rosso, who it appears will now be the Derby mount for John Velasquez. 121 on time form, hot-coated fractions, red fractions throughout on time form US. And I'll pull up the buyer here in a minute, or do you know it off the top of your head?
I don't know it.
Well, I'll get it in a minute. What did you think of the effort?
I thought it was cool. I mean, I told you, I texted you during the day, and I told you how proud I was of myself. The reason I was so proud is because I saw a Bob Baffert interview. After
your close personal friend Bob Baffert, don't you mean?
Yeah, we interviewed. When I say interview, I mean we were FaceTiming. and
that's
Bob
a lie,
said,
if you're wondering, folks.
Yeah, Bob said that he considered. Okay, so I just put some pieces together. First, he tried to run Restoring Hope at Sunland and didn't get him in. And then
you would have known that if you'd read Mary Rampolini's article on the pages of Daily Racing Form, JK. Just like,
I don't know, I was busy handicapping some who knows what, probably parks or something. He had mentioned that he obviously that problem, and then he also mentioned, which I don't know if this was in Mary's article, that he considered running him in the Bayshore. And when I heard that, it made me just feel like, ooh, that's just not very confident. And Johnny was riding well on the day, and then obviously
the two Pletchers had run off the screen to that point, which made me respect his chances a lot more. It just seemed like the barn was really cycling up between what we saw from was it National Flag and of course Army Mule.
Yeah, absolutely. And I in the last minute in contest, I made the switch off of.
You took the wig off. You put the wig back in. What do you keep it in a box? What do you? I've never seen where the thing lives, but it made its way back into the closet. You traded it. You put on your Todd Pletcher suit, and you hoped for the best.
Exactly. And it was just one of my weaknesses as a horse player is I fall in love with an idea or a concept or a decision, and I don't let smart information, new information, late information get me off of that opinion that I've already convinced. That's just how my brain works. I convince myself that how I see the race is exactly how it's going to happen. And so it's really hard to go back on it. And for whatever reason, I was able to shake it. And I was really proud of myself of being able to do that, because it's not something I usually can do well.
And it did result in dividends as you won your next weekend's Keeneland contest, right?
No, I was in contention in this one, but I didn't win it in this one. I won it in another one. So. Oh,
okay. I thought it was all tied together. But what did you think of the performance? Is this a serious contender for the Kentucky Derby, being reasonably? Well, I mean, I guess it was. I was going to say reasonably close. He came into the race a little bit early, was pretty far back. However, early on in the race. Give me your evaluation of Vino Rosso and how seriously we should be taking him.
I think he's the type of horse that absolutely will not win, but he will. He's got an amazing chance to get second, third, or fourth, because he's one of those. Because here's my thing: is if the pace situation sets up in a way that he can win the Derby, then someone else is going to win it, because someone else is going to get the same setup.
He'll be a better closer,
right? But if he gets that Todd trip where he draws the 16 or the 15 or the 14. He breaks. Next thing you know, he's second or third going into the first turn in the first or the second flight. He's obviously got bottom. He's a Curlin out of a Street Cry mare. He's trained by Todd. He's ridden by Johnny. There's a great chance he'll just kind of stay on. He feels a little bit like Tappert, right? Like Tappert didn't get a great trip in the Derby, but he ran well in the Derby. He just feels the type of horse that's just going to kind of be there, and could potentially grab a piece. I just don't see him winning, but he's definitely one that has the running style that he could get lucky and kind of pick up a piece or two.
I'm looking to see what price he is now. Just scrolling through here, I see some 40-1 in the UK on Free Drop Billy. For an each way proposition, that's not too bad. That would be like getting $22 to show potentially, but you'd obviously have to also invest the same amount to win at most bookmakers. But still, that doesn't sound too horrible. To go back to Free Drop for a minute, I'm somehow not seeing Vino Rosso listed in these odds. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I'm sure he'll appear as we get closer. I guess with that kind of setup, it was a fast finish visually. I want to take a little bit of a closer look. At least on the time form U.S. figures, it does look like, despite drawing off by 3, that number goes down late. I don't love that for a horse who, like you said, is going to probably be facing some horses with better closing kick. But, respect obviously always due to that camp, and a good showing in the Derby would be no surprise. Now, here's the world of horse racing I wish we lived in, JK. I wish we lived in a world of horse racing. And believe me, I bet Enticed And I didn't think this was going to happen for 1 second. So don't get me wrong, and I'm not sour grapesing it here. But I wish we lived in a world of horse racing where the amount of interference that Vino Rosso caused Enticed was grounds for disqualification. And I think it really stinks that, like, not only that it isn't, but that we don't even really know, because of all the different rules from state to state, et cetera, what the rules really are, to have this conversation in a more definitive way. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I obviously was hoping he did come down. And I said there's no way they're taking down Johnny, Todd, and Rapoli.
I said all the same things, but divorce yourself from what was going to happen and think about what's fair.
I mean, I did think Entice came out a little bit, but I think obviously Vino Rosso was more of the problem. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue with that. If it was universal and that was a DQ, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's not, and like I said, I'm not expecting that would have happened. But I think you'd have a cleaner game that was safer if that was the case. Because I think it's very hard to know with bumping. You know, sometimes it's like, picture yourself as a human and you're running, and sometimes you brush along somebody and it means nothing. And another time it could knock you off stride or knock the wind out of you or whatever, and it could easily mean the difference. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to look and be like, oh, he won 3 lengths clear. How can that be a DQ? Well, when you think of 3 lengths in time terms, and, you know, you're obviously looking at, you know, way less than a second, to me, very easily that amount of interference can cost. And as for Entice coming back out on him, I think that was just to avoid, you know, getting knocked over sideways. But I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of different ways to interpret it, but I thought this was one where I wasn't thinking a lot of people would agree with that view, but I actually feel pretty strongly about it, and it's just something I wanted to throw out there, and I'm curious what other people think. But it sounds like you don't think I'm crazy anyway.
No, not crazy. Just a little sour grapes.
No, it's not sour grapes at all. I never thought I was going up even for 1 second. Never thought it even for 1 second. It's just something that occurred to me while watching it. And don't get me started on the one from Santa Anita the other week. That's all. Then you want to hear some sour grapes? Get me going on Mackenzie.
How about while we're in the great state of New York? How about that other Todd Pletcher horse?
You want to talk Army Mule?
Wow.
137 time form US with a hot first quarter. You want to talk about running off the screen? This performance was just awesome.
Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. And I have not done the work yet, but I've heard smart people say that down there wasn't where you wanted to be. Not that he was necessarily all the way down there, but just in that general vicinity is not where you wanted to be.
That's interesting. So not helped. Not a Mendelssohn situation where the conveyor belt was helping, is what you're saying.
No, not at all. That is an absolute racehorse, and it's also a great example, a textbook example of why it's important, I think, at times to play the jockey game into the musical chairs of the jocks, but not to take it literal as like some deciding factor. Obviously, the Javier thing this weekend, announcing that he's not going to ride Bolt Doro. I don't think that's because. I mean, I think that it's not because Bolt Doro's not good or that he thinks Audible is better. I think that he thinks that it's pretty darn close, and Audible is owned by Windstar and trained by Todd Pletcher, and that's just a smarter business decision for him. I think that also, with Johnny riding Awesome Slew here and not Army Mule, I don't think it's Johnny saying that he thought Awesome Slew was better. It was more of a circumstantial. Right. It was more of a circumstantial thing. Why he
I think it had to do with him committing and not being able to. You would think that had to do with committing and not being able to get out of something. I have no inside information on this, folks. Just guessing. But doesn't it feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good for Joe Bravo.
Say that again.
How awesome of how many times has he probably lost him out on a horse, and then he gets to pick this one up. I think that's that's definitely awesome for him and awesome opportunity for him in his career, because this thing is, I mean, I don't really care what happens between now and Belmont Day. This thing's going to be the favorite for the Met Mile.
Yeah, you got to figure. I've got the buyer here, 1:14, and you look at the time the horse came. I mean, it was just, and also, you got Awesome Slew, who ran his race chasing and still won by 6 1/4. It was eye popping. It's exciting to think how good this horse can be. And would you assume laid off? This has probably been written about in the pages of DRF, so you can mock me here if you've seen this one. But do you assume it's a wait and hit up the Met Mile?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, like, based on the fact that he's only run as many times as he has in his career already, suggests that he's obviously got some things he's trying to work through from a health standpoint. So I don't see them running him back at Churchill in 3 or 4 weeks in a what I think that's a grade 2. There's no real purpose in that when you can turn him into a stallion by giving him 6, 7, 8 weeks. It's actually much longer than that, isn't it? 5. It's significantly longer. But I don't know if he's going to – I mean, where is he going to run him in between if he doesn't run him at Churchill? You're not going to –
No, it would be Churchill. And I think the Pletcher methodology, obviously a believer in the bounce theory and all that stuff, and obviously somebody whose horses run incredibly well fresh, typically come back off the layoff fully formed. I think it's 8 weeks, isn't it? I don't think it's more than 8 weeks.
How many weeks? Well, we're 4 weeks away from Derby, right?
Okay, so then it's 9.
It'll be 3 weeks Saturday.
Yeah.
And then obviously 5 weeks to Preakness, and then 3 weeks. Yeah. So in between 8 and 9, or the midway point of 8 and 9.
Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't sound crazy to me for that way that operation works. And I mean, I think he's probably a stallion already. I mean, Carter being a grade 1 and that kind of, for all we know, they have the deal done already. But clearly the Met is going to be very meaningful in terms of the position that he eventually takes in the breeding industry.
Obviously we were supposed to see Sharp Azteca in Dubai, and he had a setback. I sure hope we get him back in time for this race. And what a showdown it would be between the two of those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was originally bummed at the moving of the Met Mile to be, I loved when that was like the centerpiece of a weekend here in New York. But as time has gone on and we've had this I don't mind the Belmont Supercard to the degree that I sort of did a few years ago. I'm just thinking about what a great day of racing that's gonna be. I definitely get it a bit more than I once did. You'll be in attendance for that one, presumably.
Yes, I am. I will be there for sure. I'm hoping that that I can get qualified. I'll be trying to play this weekend. I think there's a 4:10 game, so I'll try to get feet into that this week, and then either way, I'll at least have one entry for that one.
Lots of stuff going on DRF tournaments. There is a big Belmont game this weekend. You had something to add to that?
Yeah, no. Before we go, I want to talk to you. I need your help on deciding if I'm dumb or not for this move I tried to make. I think there's a little game theory to it, so I wanted to try to get to that at some point. So Saturday or Sunday, you made fun of me last time because I didn't sign up early enough for that kind of those Sunday games that don't feed. So the night before, I got 2 entries. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to get another Keeneland seat, and I'm just going to do it. So I get the 2 entries. I had been doing good in head-to-head, so I had the account was looking good. So I get 2 entries. And then the second game, because it's a 1 in 10 limited to 10 people, so it just stays 1 in 10. It doesn't change. When it's filled, it's over. So then they opened up a second game, and I was looking at it, and it got to 6 people. And like I said, 1 in 10, but it goes with 9 people. So essentially there's no takeout. If 9 guys are in it, there's 0 takeout. And it was just sitting on 6. And I made the decision from a math standpoint and trying to be cute and cheeky that I was going to grab 3 entries. I was going to make the game go that wasn't going to go otherwise. And I was effectively going to play in a takeout free game, my 3 entries versus 6 other entries. And I felt like I had a pretty good shot and a pretty good edge to get there. And then a guy hit a cap horse in the first race.
Oh my goodness. That is a pie in the face right there. Oh man.
I still think it was the right math, and I wanted you to tell me that I was right.
I think there is a qualification here, and it's what value were you really getting from that third entry? If it's a 3-entry spot, if it's a spot, I presume you're talking about an all-in tournament, or could you change?
Yes,
picks?
all in.
So this is where it gets interesting to me, because I think there's only certain situations where you're going to get any extra equity at all playing a third entry in an all-in format. And if it's not one of those situations, you're essentially paying the cost of your third entry to make the game go. So those other people might not be paying takeout, but you're kind of essentially paying it all for them potentially.
Yeah, no, you're right. And here's the other crazy part about it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, 100%. And you're typically right. One of the only reasons I was okay with it was, I talked to you about how I like to try to have, if I play multiple entries, I want to use the same horse on like between 60 and 70% of them or higher. I want to use the same horse across both entries rather than that zigzaggy thing. Well, it so happens, and it doesn't usually happen this way, my third entry on Sunday, although, we all got blown away by the guy that hit the cap horse, my third entry was actually my best score.
Okay.
Because I had a lot the horses that I was hitting on all 3 entries, they were happening on all 3. But then I hit like some random, horse that was like my third choice that I just kind of threw on that third one, and he actually won. And that one ended up being the one that was best. And then in the last race, it was a turf race at Santa Anita. I was a down the hill race at Santa Anita. I actually had a chance to win on that third one if my horse would have run well, but he didn't. But so it worked out. I guess
that's smart. No, I think that makes me feel better about it. That it sounds like there was a race where you thought there were 3. I mean, to me, it comes down to this. It's not all about where you want to play them the same. It's about those spread races. If you're just doing, if you have at least 2 spots where you legitimately have 3 horses that you wanted to cover, I think it was well played and you got very unlucky. I think one could trick oneself pretty easily in that situation to think you were getting value and not have value because you're not calculating enough about like the real cost to you of that third entry versus how much of a benefit the third entry gives you over 2. But after hearing the full thing, I think it was a clever move that you got unlucky.
Yeah, we'll see. It's actually kind of a fun thing to do if you're on DRF tournaments. Is like it doesn't happen very often, but there's great opportunities for a smart equity play. You just got to keep an eye on all the games until like the last kind of minute, and at that last minute or 2, you can kind of pounce in there and get some some favorable odds in your favor.
Yeah, get the best of it a little bit. And we should point out, JK, like people might not be understanding, like, oh, a cap horse. Some people, you get 50 people in a contest, like somebody's going to probably have the cap horse. This was a contest, obviously limited. I mean, you're only playing against 6 entries that weren't yours. This is the benefit to me of the player-friendly ratios on the DRF tournament's website. It's very rare. Typically, I mean, how many times out of 10 does that cap horse go unhit in that spot? To me, it's
all the time. I was playing.
To me, it's 0.5 in 10. Somebody's going to have that, right?
And the other game that I mentioned I was in, like that didn't, like no one had the horse, right?
I did notice if that entry of yours had been in the other game, I think you would have gotten the seat.
Well, I appreciate you rubbing that in, Pete. The other thing that I want to say is that 2 short price horses, it's that power of $4 theory. Analyze It is the reason that I got a Keeneland seat. If it wasn't for Analyze It, I wouldn't have gotten them. So I wouldn't have gotten it. And then Rushing Fall was extremely helpful on Sunday as well.
I haven't seen Rushing Fall yet. That was travel day for me. I think I was eating ice cream in Cincinnati. Oh, by the way, this is a terrible tangent for those of you out there wanting us to talk about the rest of the grade ones, but the heck with it. We're going to talk about ice cream for a minute. Aglamacey's brothers. Did you make it there, and what did you think?
I did make it there. It was awesome. I will be honest. I was like, and this like really blows people's mind, right? Yes, I love ice cream. It's a problem. It's almost an addiction. However, I'm not like a middle of the day ice cream guy. It's like I like to conclude my day with ice cream. Like it's
so
at night thing. Like I like to do
that's
like
the
after I
I've
eat,
ever heard.
like before I go to bed. I don't like having ice cream when the sun's out. So I went, but
I think I might have to put you in timeout. Not literally. Go ahead. You can explain.
No, so I liked it. It was really good. It was like some of the best ice cream I've ever had, but I didn't get to enjoy it the way that I would have liked to.
Gotcha. All right. Anyway, enough about ice cream. We have grade 1 races to talk about. And I do want to, since you mentioned Analyze It, that was one that I found was a fairly mind-blowing effort, and a horse who I'm thinking after the race, now these days there is a path for a 3-year-old turf horse races like the Belmont Derby, the Secretariat. I'm watching that race, comes back with a 97 by our speed figure, and I'm thinking they might be able to win the million if they want. This horse looks so good to me. How good am I overrating him? How good do you think this horse is?
No, I think he's pretty good, and he's got the trainer that you want. Just to run that fast as a 3-year-old off a layoff on a yielding turf course is like pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'm sure the other riders during the race are thinking early, like, man, on soft these fractions, isn't he going too fast? And then he goes and does that in the stretch. So that was pretty tremendous.
He's going to be fun. I would hope he'll run Derby weekend so we can see him. I don't have to worry about some Donegal horse beating me in the pick 6.
Yeah, we've seen that movie before. In fact, I guess you're in. You are on the planet Texas, but you're in Dallas at the moment, so you don't have the Arklow picture staring you in the face as you make that joke. I don't. And in fact, it might have to get moved. It's haunting me as of late. That's interesting. Well, we'll get into your superstitions on another show. Let's talk for a second about Monomoy Girl, another one of the easiest winners of the weekend. Cruises at 1-5 on Saturday in the Grade 1 Ashland. What do you think is going to happen with her going forward? How good is she? Was this a case of her just being better than the field, or are you optimistic for further improvement going forward?
Well, a few ideas. One, I want to commend Florent and Brad Cox for the idea to send from the rail, not to jack around. I wish people would do that more often, obviously. And then, I had no idea that was going to be Brad Cox's first Grade 1 win. Did you? Which was shocking in its own right.
I did know that. First Grade 1 win for Brad Cox, presumably of many. Monomoy Girl cruising home. Comes back. The raw figure on time form was a 118, adjusted down for the relatively easy pace to a 115 on the rating side, which dovetails neatly with the 95 by her speed figure that she earned.
Yeah, no, I thought she was good. I think from a flashy standpoint, the filly out in California might have been a little bit more impressive if we're looking forward to the Kentucky Oaks, but I think Monomoy Girl is live. She'll be a likely or first, second, third choice. I mean, second, third choice type for the Oaks. I thought she was good. And nothing really to knock, but she also got an easy pace, and she was the best horse in there, and she was 1-5, and I thought she won like she was supposed to.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. It didn't seem like a negative at all, but in terms of going forward, if those were the ideal conditions to run a big figure and the filly in California still ran faster, we'll get to that in a minute, but not necessarily your Kentucky Oaks favorite off that, but certainly one of the choices in a horse to take seriously. Can't leave Keeneland. We will get out to Cali, but can't leave Keeneland without talking for a minute about the Madison and Finley's Lucky Charm. I thought we were going to have an 8-1 winner for the podcast. We end up with a 5 podcast, but hey, at least it's still a winner for the podcast.
Yeah, good for her. She ran well. She was one that I considered that I thought would run well. I kind of had her in like a saver position. It was kind of a blankety type of finish, and sometimes those can kind of be an indicator of the race not being all that great. I don't think that this was like the greatest Grade 1 we're going to see this year, but good for her. She ran well, and good for her to get that win. And I'm sure we'll see her back. We'll probably see her on Churchill Day on her home track, or Churchill Day on Derby Day, running in the Humana Distaff. I would imagine she'll be in that race.
An interesting slip calling Derby Day Churchill Day. We'll have to consult a team of therapists to see what you mean by that. Let's go to California and let's go right to the Oaks, JK. We talked about it on the show, but what did you think based on what you thought was going to happen here and how it all played out in the track?
Yeah, it just felt like it was going to be a really fast pace. What did Craig have it? Did he have it blue or red or what?
I'll take a look right now. Do you know what race number it was?
Yes, I do. It was race number 11. No, I thought she was really good. Pretty impressive. Midnight, what is it, Bissau or Bissau?
Bissau.
Bissau? What is that like I want to say it's a soup. Is that what's a Bissau?
No, I think it's the thing that popped to mind, and I don't speak French, but the thing that popped to mind is kiss. Isn't Bissau kiss?
I don't know. Midnight Kiss, huh?
Midnight Kiss, a sexy name.
Yeah, no, I thought she was good. Made that kind of. I want to see what the fractions were before I give my exact. Not what they were, but who
coded evenly for Craig. The array went 115, 111, 120, 119, 116. So speeding up, and she made her move during that fast part of the race. So that I give a little. He didn't officially upgrade that 116, but to me, that's the kind of thing I sometimes look at and give a horse a little bit of extra credit when they're doing their running during the fastest part of the race. That's one of the cool things you can do with those time form US figures. And let me hunt up I'll hunt up the buyer here while you process that information and give your thought.
Yeah, it was visually impressive. I would have hoped that, that the pace was like rated slower or whatever, but I thought she was good. I think she'll definitely improve off of that, and the way that she ran in that race. It doesn't seem like the added distance will be any problems, and good for a kind of an old time guy like Bill Spar.
Yes, I believe the figure came back in 99, and now, of course, that I need it, I'm not accessing it. No, it came back a flat 90, so it wasn't. For some reason, I thought it was notably higher than Monomoy Girl. I was wrong about that. Not sure where I came up with that idea, but your early Kentucky Oaks thoughts, JK. Do you have a horse you're interested in? You have anything on your watch list that's going to be coming back in this race?
I mean, these two are interesting, right? I mean, Midnight Bissau is with the kind of the late running, more ground type that, is interesting. Monomoy Girl is a little bit more tactical, so that's always also encouraging.
Yeah, right now, price-wise, Midnight Bissau 9-2, Monomoy Girl 5, Caledonia Road listed as 7-1, Coach Rocks listed as 8-1 in terms of your top Kentucky Oaks contenders when doing odds checker. Usually
in love with something at this point, and in these Oaks races, there's always some kind of cool, fun filly to get behind, and I can't believe Caledonia Road's even still on she hasn't even run yet.
No, that's kind of amazing. Listed at $3, so I don't know what to make of that.
She worked February 21st, the 28th, March 7th, and March 15th, and then she hasn't been on the tab. There's no way she's running.
No chance. Don't bet her. And if the bookies were paying, if they cared this racing, they would be taking that one right down off. I was just reading those numbers by road. I probably shouldn't have even bothered with that one. Good point by you, JK. Anything else from California or stakes racing around the country we want to get to? I think they'll probably let us run a little long. We got about a minute left if we just want to do it. If we just want to play it straight.
Well, we could talk about the race that cost me in a contest, which was pretty agitating. The Royal Heroine. I come on the show, and I talked about Sophie P, Beau Recall, and Madam Stripes. I talked about those horses because I thought the pace was going to be really hot. Those horses looked like the most live closers of the group. And then I get the workout report, and Sophie P's got bad works. Beau Recall's got bad works. And so I kind of switched my attention and ended up leaning on Madam Stripes. So I needed Madam Stripes to win. I'm thinking that Madam Stripes is going to, they're going to cook out in front of her. She's going to come from off of it and mow them all down. So she ends up being on the lead, and then they go slow, and the horse that I thought was gonna, and then Beau Recall ends up being last and closes into the slow pace with the horse I thought was going to be last was on the lead.
It's annoying.
It was very, very frustrating, and so it is what it is.
race design in turf races can be exasperating. And I think that's a pretty good example right there. Beaurecall gets the job done with a 91 Beyer 119 or 118 on the Timeform US scale. So a little bit of a discrepancy there between the Beyer figure, which had the race slow, and the Timeform, which I'm guessing that's a lot closer to par. Yeah, it's such an important tool in your arsenal. And like so many things in playing the horses, I think some people are tempted to say, oh, how you guys talk about race design and you got that one completely backwards. What good is it? And of course, it comes down to the idea of focusing on making good decisions, and you just have to live with it and move on when you get cruddy outcomes. You have a good sense if you keep records, if you're good at analyzing yourself in general over time, which angles and which aspects of handicapping and playing the horses and betting are positives for you and which ones are coin tosses or negatives for you. I imagine, JK, not for a second does that result put you off the idea of trying to design races in your head before they run.
No, I was unlucky. I mean, I'll always do that. I mean, you just that happens. And to be honest, like, you know, I think that Kent was semi-smart for taking the lead. I just wish he would have gone on with it once he got there. I think he kind of, I don't know. I think he just kind of was cat and mousing and kind of, you know, on the lead, then eye to eye, then kind of off, then on, and it was just a really weirdly.
There were some really cute rides in that race. I imagine the connections of Thundering Sky and the rider there would want that one back as well. I think it's tough sometimes when you get slow bunched up paces early. Sometimes just lead to slow bunched up finishes late. And look at this. I can't recall seeing this one before, JK, on Timeform. Top 4 finishers: Beau Recall, Thundering Sky, Madam Stripes, and Enola Gray all end up with a 118 Timeform.
Yeah, wow. Enola Gray missed the break. She kind of ruined the whole thing.
That's right. Ends up hustling up, and you don't get it done that day. But, you know, Beau Recall ran. You know, Beau Recall gets to the wire first, and that's how they award the purse money. And, you know, we've yet to find that window to go to cash when you say, you know, I was probably best if I got the trip or the race played out like it was supposed to on paper. You know, they don't give you cash at that window, and that window leads you right to the loony bin.
You know, yeah, 100%. And I know we're about to transition away from this. I don't want to forget, or transition out. Our friend Mike Hogan. I don't know if he said something really, really smart on Twitter, and I wanted to make sure I talked about it.
Give props to the podcast host emeritus.
Yeah, I know I think that Mike's probably he still has like the ghost of Mike. He's still got a lot of fans that listen to us and just wish that one of us would go away and trade him in for one. You know, mostly probably me, but. He said, horse racing Twitter, I can't play Justify in the Derby. He's raced just 3 times. Also, horse racing Twitter, Hofberg sure looks live.
That's a pretty good line.
Yeah,
I do like Hofberg as another one of those horses to potentially come running late. I mean, you'll never hear me do this again, defend horse racing Twitter. Obviously, it can be wonderful, and I think there are so many great things about it for somebody, a way to get connected to other fans and things. But in terms of the like sort of semi, you know, wise guy aspect of it, with that one, I guess it comes down to price. For some people, would be the argument they make for the 33-1 Hofberg versus the 5-1 Justify. But it is pretty silly, and Mike does a good job pointing that out. We've been without him for almost a year, unfortunately. But if you want more from Mike, you can follow him on Twitter. At M. Hogan Says, I believe. And he also, of course, has the wonderful music podcast, the 3 Songs podcast, with our friend Bob Nastanovich, who I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time when we were doing the NHC coverage out in Las Vegas as part of Steve Bicken at the races. So those guys do a good job, play a lot of interesting music, a lot of stuff even I've never heard before, and that made me want to add some records to my wish list, and they're doing a good job over there. And folks who like weird music like me should definitely check it out. Closing thought, JK, or should we get out of here?
Had you muted? Let's hop.
Okay. I will tell you this. Another opportunity to win into the World Horse Players Tour. Santa Anita Preakness event coming up on Sunday. Slate that will hopefully lean heavily on Keeneland. We've got Belmont this weekend. We've got Monmouth this weekend. Lots of stuff going on at DRF tournaments. And I'll just tease it. Some really cool and interesting new stuff percolating. Obviously, once the news is ready to announce, we'll be talking about it right here on the DRF Players Podcast, our de facto sponsor, DRF Bets and DRF Tournaments.
Quick thought, Pete. I do have one. If you're playing in the grade 1 gamble if you're listening to our show, you're playing in the grade 1 gamble on Sunday, tweet at us that you'd like to have all Keeneland races for Sunday. We're trying to work through that. Hopefully the card is one that we can do it. We obviously have some restrictions we have to follow, but we're going to try to get it where it's all Keeneland, so it's just one less thing for you to have to look at. We assume there'll be a lot of horse players and contest players focusing on the races on Sunday at Keeneland.
Should be about 175 entries in there. They might even beat it. It's with the qualifying fast and furious this year at DRF tournaments. Somewhere close to 20 entries have won their way in on there. JK will be playing. Oh, during the course of the show, Vino Rosso popped up in these odds. Best price I'm seeing on him for the Kentucky Derby is 20-1, just to throw that in there. And with that, we'll button it up. I want to thank Jonathan Kinchin. I want to thank all of you for listening, most of all. Also, props, of course, to Willie Nile for singing our theme song. For more of his music, willienile.com. Our friend Travis Stone, producer AJ, producer Craig, and the whole team at drf.com. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. We'll be back on probably Friday. May you win all your photos.